Okay, everything should be good.
All right.
It is a very good morning indeed. Kendon Morris, WOMS News Radio, and on the phone with me is a man that is synonymous with TV and radio in the city of Cincinnati. And funny enough, my family actually knows your name, and that's not something we can say a lot of times around here. So that person is Dan Carroll. Dan, first off, thank you so much for being with me here this morning. How are you, my man?
Hey, Kendon. It's good to be with you. Thank you very much for having me. And no, I'm good. I'm good. I've been busy, and being busy is good. Being
There you
busy is
go.
better than not being busy.
There you go, my man. Working hard, playing a little, huh?
Working hard. Yeah, I actually I don't know if you know this, but aside from doing my radio, I do a podcast called One More and I'm Out of Here, and I got a couple of buddies, Jason Kiefer and Andrew Pappas, that I do that podcast with.
Oh,
And
there you go.
we actually had a monumental moment for us this past weekend, and we had Afro Man on our podcast. And that guy, I don't know if you know the story about Afro Man or
Oh,
not,
yeah, very well.
but he was, we've been trying for months now to get him on the podcast, and it finally all came together on Saturday. So I encourage people to go to YouTube, look up One More and I'm Out of Here, and check out the Afro Man podcast. And he had us rolling for the entire hour.
Oh,
Just
I'd only
just
imagine that
oh,
guy.
the guy is so talented, so funny,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it was worth every second of it. So that was, look, I mean, I've been in the business for over 30 years now, and
Yeah,
every once in a while when I get that chance to talk to a guy like that, it's still a huge deal for me, and that's part of what I love about being in the business, because you're never sure if things like that are going to come together, but when they do, it's a great moment.
absolutely, man. Thank you so much. I'd like to start, if it's okay. Besides that podcast, I might have to go listen to that. I'm actually going to do that when we get off here. I'd like to
There you
start,
go.
if it's okay with you, where it all kind of started for you. So, you were a supply specialist in the United States Air Force for 4 years. How the heck did we go from the U.S. military to a multi-decade career in TV and radio broadcasting and media? Kind of take me through it if you can.
Well, I mean, this man, it really goes back all the way to my high school days. When I got out of high school, I decided that I was going to go to college, and I enrolled at what was then called Cincinnati Tech, which is now Cincinnati State, but it was Cincinnati Technical College, and got in there, and I was there for a couple of semesters. And even though I was paying for it, I was paying for it out of my own pocket to go to
Right.
college there, no student loans, and that, this is back in the early 19, I mean, God, 1980. I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm dating myself, but back then, when you could actually have a job and afford college,
Right.
I was going to school there, and you know, I I was at a point after about a semester and a half where I was making excuses to cut corners, not really doing the work I should have been doing. If I didn't feel like going to class that day, I found out, well, you know what? You're in college now. No one makes you get up and go to school. And I was taking advantage of that. And I thought to myself, I'm really not doing myself any favors because I'm really not into this. So that was it for me in college. I went to an Air Force recruiter and I said, you know what? I think the military is the way for me to go. And so I joined the Air Force, and I spent 4 years in the Air Force, and that turned out to be a very good experience for me.
Hey, number one, I salute your service. Absolutely. My uncle was in the United States Air Force. He was stationed over in Alcala, like 20 miles outside of Madrid, Spain. So there's a good connection right there. But
Yeah.
of course, saluting your
Yeah.
service.
Well, thank you for that. So my time in the Air Force, I spent 3 years over in Okinawa, Japan, and then came back after that. I was stationed at a base in California, in Southern California. And my enlistment ran out, and I decided I didn't want to re-enlist. So I lived in California for a while and did some odd jobs. Had a job as a carpenter and did some framing, and learned a lot about that. And then eventually I moved back to Ohio,
Hmm.
married my current wife, and we'd been married for a short time. And we're having dinner one night, and I was at that time I was working in a cabinet shop, And she looked at me one night at dinner. She said, "What do you really want to do with your life?" And I said, I've always had this notion that I want to be on radio. And at that time, a broadcasting school had just come into Cincinnati. It was called the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. And we talked about it. And I said, well, why don't I check into this broadcasting school and see what goes on there?
Yeah.
So I went to broadcasting school at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. And based on that, from that experience, from that broadcasting school, I was able to get a couple of internships. And eventually, once I got done with the course at the broadcasting school, I got into the business, and I've been in the business ever since.
There you go, man.
That was the first, and I was working during the day, and I took classes at night, and that was 1987, and it was the first night class that they had, and so that was the late 80s, by that time the late 80s.
Right.
And that's how I got into the business, through the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
There you go. Now, I want to touch on, because you mentioned you'd like to do radio. I want to touch on WLW. You had a first stint there. I'll get to your TV career here in a moment. You had a first stint at WLW from 89 to 93 as a news anchor,
Yes.
and then from 2011 till now as a talk show host. Despite the fact that we probably lost, 310 cables when everything went all digital. What was that like going there in the late 80s and then coming back there? What had changed?
Well, I actually started at WLW when I was in the broadcasting school. I got an internship there in the newsroom, and so I was an intern and meeting the people and learning how the newsroom, how a real working radio newsroom worked at that time.
Right.
And I was an intern there look, for those who don't know, when you're an intern in the broadcasting business, you do not get paid.
No.
I know there's
No.
there's other professions where you're an intern, you draw a small salary as an intern. That doesn't happen in broadcasting. So I'm not getting paid. At the time I'm still working other jobs. But that internship really went a long way for me as far as meeting with people and networking and getting to know people in the business. And by that time, after graduating from the broadcasting school, I had landed what was my first job in radio at that time, was at a small country music station playing country music overnights on the weekend. And I'm driving to the station one night on I guess it was a Friday night. And I hear this guy doing a newscast on 700 WLW. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I can do a better job than that. And so through my internship, I knew the news director, Kathy Lair, who was the news director at that time. And I called her and I said, you know what? I said, first I said, do you remember me? And she, fortunately enough, remembered who I was. And I told her, I said, I just that exact story. I said, I'm driving to this radio station I'm working at. I heard this guy doing a newscast. And I said to myself, I can do a better job than that guy's doing. And she said, well, why don't you come in and prove it? And so I went in, auditioned, and I got the job in the newsroom, excuse me, at 700 WLW. And that's how my career there got started, being a street reporter in the newsroom at WLW.
I mean, that's like, mind you, this is 1989, wasn't it? This was way back in the day. Nothing was digital yet. So when you came back, I'm sure many things were different.
Very true.
So what were the big differences though when you came back?
Oh man, at that time, I'll tell you. But aside from the digital stuff,
Right,
which is a whole nother story, the way my career has gone in broadcasting. But aside from the digital stuff, when I was working in the newsroom there, and I first got my full-time job being a news reporter, we had a very serious competition at that time with 55 KRC.
Oh,
which
yeah.
of course is now owned, and they were owned by different broadcast entities at that time.
Long before
And of
iHeart,
course
yeah.
now, they're all owned by, what back then was Clear Channel, Community, or J-Core, actually before that, then Clear Channel, now iHeart Media. But at that time, the 55 KRC had a fully staffed 24-hour newsroom, just like we did at 700 WLW. So there was great competition. And that was the exciting part about that job, because if we didn't beat 55 KRC on a story, if they had something on before we did, you were held to account for that. So there was real consequences for not being out there, not doing your job, slacking off. It was the kind of healthy competition
Yeah.
that made you more attentive to what you were doing and put you in a position where you really had to be at your best all the time. So there was no substitute for that as far as training and as far as really getting your feet wet in the business and knowing what accountability was like. And so I think that was probably a huge factor for me.
Yeah, it was
Having
like
that responsibility and that sort of accountability when it came
right.
to being in the business.
Right. And that brings me to another point, because you had mentioned that there was good competition. You started at WXIX Fox 19, WXIX in 91, was it?
How do you have all this information about my career?
I'm just a good researcher, man. I don't ever
You
come
are.
into anything not prepared, brother. That I was worried. I'm so worried as the new guy that people
Yeah,
are going to say, "Oh, what he can't do anything." I'm so worried as that. So I come in with as much information as I can. That's
that
how
is
I've always
outstanding.
been. That's how I've always will be, man. And I appreciate
Yeah,
that very much.
I mean, you're recalling all this stuff. I couldn't recall it as well as you do. So you're doing outstanding on all. But not yet. It
Oh
was.
man.
I remember I had been at the newsroom for at that period 3.5, 4 years, and I was thinking to myself, and look, the pay rate at W even was great to have on your resume.
Right.
W700 WLW. The pay rate was not that great, so I was looking to make some more money. And I thought to myself, you know what? I think I could do television. And I had a lot better hair back then. I was probably 50 pounds lighter and all the rest of that.
Right.
And I thought I could do television. So I was casting around, and over the course of time, I had met various people in Cincinnati that were in the television business. And so it just so happened at that time that Fox 19 did not have a newsroom. I don't know if you're old enough to recall, Fox 19 used to be the station that carried cartoons all the time.
And Fox was the new network anyway, so
they had on some syndicated programming and all that kind of stuff. But when they became part of the Fox network, Fox Network came out and they told all their local affiliates. They said, we want all of our local affiliates to have a local news. So at that time, Fox 19, I found out, was starting up they're going to have their own newsroom. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity for me to get into the business. So I called up a guy I knew in Dayton, and I said, look, man, I've never done any TV. I need to get a couple of things on tape. So that was my buddy. His name is Johnny Condit, still around town. He's making documentaries now, by the way, but he's a great guy. Cool. And he said, come on up, I'll help you out. So I went up and recycled 3 of the stories that he had done previously in the days previous to me getting up there. And so I reworked those stories, got myself on camera, and submitted that for an audition tape to the news director at Channel 19. The guy's name is Greg Caputo. A great guy, very interesting guy. Came here from Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, part of his philosophy was he wanted to get a couple of people in the newsroom that had local name recognition and who had come from radio. And because the way he wanted to run the newsroom, he thought people who had been on radio would be a good fit for what he envisioned being on TV. So it just all kind of, right place, right time.
Right.
I had the right temperament, the right personality. And so I got hired at Fox 19 as a street reporter. And the other person who came in at that time with me from local radio was the woman who was still the main anchor at Fox 19, and that was Tricia Mackey. So we both came into Fox 19 as the originals, and that's how I got started in television.
There you go. What was it like your first day? I got to ask this. What was it like
Oh,
compared to radio, like you on the cameras and everything? What was it like?
well, fortunately for me, when I got hired, we were not on the air yet.
Yeah.
So I had about a two. It was about 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember the exact span of time, but it was about 2 or 3 weeks where we're in the newsroom. I mean, literally, the newsroom was still being built when I got there.
Oh, wow.
And so I had about a 2 to 3 week ramp up of meeting the people I was working with, talking about the kind of things we were going to do, meeting the photographers, learning a few things, some of the basics about being on camera and television and all that kind of stuff. So I was a little bit fortunate there that we were not on the air yet. So I had time in a real life situation, a real world situation, to prepare for that sort of thing. So,
Right.
but still, it was I was very nervous, and I remember there was a woman that came in, another reporter, and I do not recall her name right now, but she said something to me about television that I never ever forgot.
Really?
And she said, "It's not brain surgery. You might be nervous, but you know what? If you mess up, everyone's going to know about it. But guess what? No one gets killed. You're not ending someone's
I
life
love that. I
because you
love
made a
that.
mistake." And those were words that still echo in my head today.
You put that on a
And
shirt, you'd make money.
it's not brain surgery, and that put me at such great ease that I was able to get into the groove of being on television rather quickly. And people I would meet in the business, they would look at me and they would say, "Wow, this piece is really good. How long you been doing television?" I was like, I'd say, "This is my first television job," and they would look surprised at me because there is, and I don't know if it's true today, but there was back then, I think, a sense of people who were on television, especially at the network level, who really have an overinflated sense of themselves, as if they are doing something that is very. And look, I am not discounting the notion that I think being a television news reporter, an anchor, uh, delivering news on television or radio is a very, very important job, and I
Right.
take it very seriously. But I think people get an overinflated sense of themselves because they're on television. I don't know that attitude is all that pervasive today, but I sensed that when I first started working in the business. And I really got to thinking, who do these people think they are? They're on television. It ain't brain surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to relax. You got to have a little bit of fun.
Right.
And
You can't.
there were so many people in the business who were so uptight, and I just couldn't stand that. But I remember them, looking at me with this look of surprise on their face that, wow, you're really, you didn't come from a smaller market, because there's not a lot of people in television who start at a market the size of Cincinnati. They're typically at smaller markets, and then they come in here and they go on to larger markets. But I started in Cincinnati, never really had a desire to go to another market or, try to get on the network level or anything like that. I always enjoyed my time in Cincinnati. But I remember them looking at me and acting how surprised they were that I was able to do it. And I said, "Look, I did this in radio for several years. To my way of thinking, I'm sort of doing the same thing. I'm just doing it on camera."
Yeah, exactly. It can't be that hard. You had worked for, you worked for Fox 19 for almost 20 years.
Yep.
I would put money that you have some amazing stories. Can you give us one?
Um, I'll tell you one from the early days.
Oh,
Was the set that we had, the very first set that we had at Fox 19 was, and this was one of, I told you about our news director, Greg Caputo.
right.
This was one of his ideas, that the anchor desk was actually in the newsroom. It was in the middle, smack dab in the middle of the newsroom. So, and it was a working newsroom. We had an assignment desk. I had a little cubicle there where I would do my work, and there were other cubicles around where the other reporters worked. And so there were different camera shots that you could depending on what shot the camera was using, you would see different parts in the newsroom. And so we had been on the air, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and there was another reporter there. His name was Judd Cribbs, just a unbelievably talented guy, funny guy. I mean, he could play guitar, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
And so we were there during a newscast one night, and we had TVs in the newsroom, so we could actually watch our own newscast while it was on the air. And again, this was before digital television, so it was analog. So we were actually watching the newscast in real time, not on a. That's one of the things about digital television, is that you don't see it in real time. There's like a 7 or 8 second delay,
right?
Because of the way digital works. But in any case, Judd Cribbs and I are there, and we noticed that when there's a certain shot on the air, that our cubicles, you can see our cubicles in the background. And so I thought, well, we need to make this more interesting when we know that that we are on, that we are on in the background.
Right.
And so we became very aware of this, and we would watch the shot, and we could actually see the rundown of the show. So we knew when those shots were going to be on. And what we did was, anytime we knew we were going to be in the background, I'd take a couple of pieces of paper and stand up and lean over my cubicle and point to the paper and act as if we were talking about something very important. And then he'd reach for the phone and pick up the phone and act as if he was dialing furiously.
That's too good.
So
that's too good.
We did this for a couple of weeks with these shots, and then our news director called us in one day, and he said, "Hey, when the show was going on, what were you guys talking about?" And we came clean and told him how we were just.
Oh no!
And he said, "Okay, don't do that anymore." Because we're creating this notion that something really important is going on, and we got some big breaking, and so that was frowned upon a little bit. So we had to cut that out. But
yeah,
that was one of the funny stories from the early days of Fox.
Can you imagine people trying to do that today? Oh man,
no,
no, you don't get away with that today.
Yeah, but we had some fun with it.
Absolutely. How could you not?
And again, you know what? No one got hurt. No one.
Right. No one gets killed. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. We were just a couple of young guys who were goofing off, having fun.
And that's you got it. Listen, you got to have fun when you work in a job like this. How can you not? How can you not?
Well, that's what I always tell people. And they ask me what it's like to work and look, my first love is radio, so I'm back to doing radio now, and it was my first love, and I always tell people I would much rather work in radio than I would in TV. Not that I didn't like TV, but to my way of thinking, the radio business, you can, even though people don't see you when you're behind that microphone, I think you really have a chance to be yourself. And you get 3 hours to be yourself I did the 55 KRC morning show this morning, so I had 4 hours.
Great show, by the way.
Be myself, and I did that. Just to me anyway, is a lot more appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even with radio or TV in general, the market is such a big factor. You actually left the Cincinnati market for a while and worked at WKEF and I think one other station. Did you ever miss Cincinnati culture? Leaving going to Dayton.
WKEF, WRGT, ABC 22, and Fox 45, and Dayton. Yeah, I anchored the morning show up there for a few years, and then I guess I wore out my welcome there, and so that's why. They say you're nobody in the business until you've been fired a couple of times. So I've got that under my belt, getting fired a couple of times, but when I was working in Dayton, I was actually living in Cincinnati. And so I had to be up there for the morning show. It turned out that a guy that I knew, or no, I didn't know him before, but a friend of mine, Megan Mongello, was actually anchoring up there, and they needed a news anchor in a hurry, and she knew I was available, so they called me, and I started out in a freelance situation up there because at the time I was available.
Yeah,
and I was freelancing anchoring their morning show. And then they, after a period of time, they decided to hire me full time. But I was actually living in Cincinnati, so I did not relocate to Dayton. I actually stayed in Cincinnati, and I would drive every morning from Cincinnati to Dayton to do the morning show up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was that got to be I won't lie, that got to be a little bit of a grind. I would leave my driveway at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, literally pulling out of my driveway at 3 a.m. And it was literally a 1 hour drive from my driveway to walking in the door at ABC 22 and Fox 45 in Dayton every morning.
Wow.
And it was funny. There was a couple of times I got stopped because I set the cruise control on about 80 and I'm zipping up there. And I got stopped a couple of times by Ohio State Patrol.
Oh, man.
And I remember one guy says, he looks at my driver's license and he says, "Aren't you the guy who was on Fox 19? And I said, "Yes, I was on Fox 19. He says, "Well, what are you doing now?" And I looked at my wristwatch and I said, "I'm working in Dayton now. I've got to be there in about 30 minutes. So if you could hurry this up." And he's like, "Oh, okay, here's your driver's license back. Go ahead. Go ahead. Get out. Just be careful out there." So that was, and I was like, yes.
You got to get out of jail for free card.
It pays to be on TV. I got out of that ticket, so that was
There you go, man. And then after you came back to the Cincinnati market, you joined WCPO Channel 9 as the helicopter man. You like that, helicopter man?
Yeah. Well, actually, when I was working in Dayton, I was actually I had just started doing talk radio at WLW before that. So I was working in Dayton. I'll tell you how crazy the period of time was. I was working in Dayton, anchoring the morning show there every morning, Monday to Friday. Bill Cunningham had just started doing his syndicated show, and back then he would fly to New York every week, and he would be gone 2 to 3 days every week taping his syndicated show.
Oh, wow.
At a studio in New York. So I would do the morning show up in Dayton till 9 a.m., drive back here to Kenwood to do the Bill Cunningham show from noon to 3. And then on Fridays, I was also doing a pre-recorded show that was sponsored by the Cincinnati Business Courier. It was a business show, and we shot that at Channel 12. So on Fridays, I would drive to Channel 12 and shoot a recorded show there on Fridays. So I had TV in Dayton, a radio show here at 700 WLW, and then a recorded show I would shoot at Channel 12.
What did you do?
That was a very busy time in my life,
right?
When I was doing all that stuff, and so that was while I was working in Dayton, and so I was. The thing in Dayton came to an end, and I was back at WLW doing talk shows. And I'm there one night, and I get a call from Jeff Brogan, who's the general manager at Channel 9 still, and he was the general manager then. Interestingly enough, though, Jeff Brogan was actually an intern at Fox 19 when I was working there.
Really?
And you want to talk to an interesting guy, talk to him about his meteoric rise in the media business, because he went from an intern to, in just the span of, it was less than 10 years, becoming the general manager of a local television station. And wow. I mean, that is an unbelievable story.
Yeah, you don't hear about that.
Of itself. So he calls me and he says, "Hey, man," he says, "You interested in getting back in TV?" And I said, "Well, it's got to be the right thing." So unbeknownst to me at that time, Channel 9 was bringing in a helicopter to do helicopter traffic reports,
Chopper 9,
and breaking news reports. And it just so happened that during my time at Fox 19, out of all the different things that I did there, because initially at Fox 19 we had a 10 o'clock news and a midnight news. Well, the midnight news went away, and all we had was a 10 o'clock news, and the decision was made to start a morning show at Fox 19. So at Fox 19, when the morning show started, I went in there and my contract was up and I was getting ready to sign a new contract. And I said, I think I'd be interested in doing something on the morning show. And it turned out that part of what the morning show was going to feature was helicopter traffic. And they asked me if I'd be interested in being in the helicopter and doing that. So I said, yeah. So I flew around in the helicopter that we called the Fox Flyer back then.
Yeah.
For about 3 years. And so I had experience in the Cincinnati market of being in a helicopter. Jeff Brogan knew this and called me, and I turned out that I was the Chopper 9 guy for Channel 9 when they brought the helicopter in.
Yeah.
So that was a fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. You ever get motion sickness?
Never
Really?
once. Yeah, never once had a problem being in the chopper. It's not for everyone, but I absolutely loved it. I don't live far from Lunken Airport, and we flew out of Lunken Airport, so got to go down to Lunken, hang out at the airport every day. Got to meet a lot of great people in the aviation industry in and around Cincinnati, and it was just it was such a blessing to be able to be part of that. And it was, and I thought about it one time, and I thought, you know what? I'm the only one in Cincinnati that has the job that I have. There was no one else in Cincinnati that was doing, especially, and when I was at Fox 19, we had a helicopter. John Phillips from 700 WLW was flying around in a helicopter. Channel 5 had a helicopter, and Channel 9 had a helicopter at that time. So there was a lot of people up in the air every day flying around. But then when I was at Channel 9, we were the only ones in town that had a helicopter, and I was the only one who was reporting from a helicopter every day. So at that time, I was the only one in Cincinnati that had the job that I had, and I thought to myself, this is pretty cool. There's no one else in this town that has the job that I have. So that was another interesting and really great experience being in the business.
Absolutely, man. You've got so many accolades, man. And I always end an interview just like this. I have two more questions for you because I want to get out of here. I know you've got very important things to do, man. So
very important, yes. Got some brain surgery coming up. Yeah,
exactly right. You got to save a few lives. So
absolutely.
My first question is this: what advice do you have for the up and coming broadcaster like myself, for the up and coming news reporter or journalist that may not have the confidence that you do?
Well, you know what? And from time to time, I just met a group of young people that came in from the broadcasting school. They were taking a tour of 700 WLW, and I was there. And the person who was giving the tour asked me if I could speak to the group, so I did. And I told him, and I looked at him, and I said, "Look, I said, I think the opportunities now to get in the business are so much more expanded than when I was in the business." And all you got to do is look at what goes on the internet. Look at all the people that have podcasts. Look at all the cable venues. Look at all the outlets. And the thing is, these outlets demand content.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are in a position where you can create content, where you can be the one who relays that content, I think there are boundless opportunities. And I think more than ever, especially today, you have the ability to do it on your own. You don't need to go to a television or a radio station where they've got a transmitter and a tower and very expensive cameras and very expensive radio gear and all that kind of stuff. If you've got an iPhone and an internet connection, you're essentially on the air. And so I just think it's, and I told him, the way, and you asked me earlier about the whole change from analog to digital, and the way my career has gone. The timeline of that was that, digital came in, and I saw the change to digital, and I really have never had the opportunity to sit down and be taught how all the digital stuff works. I have a cursory understanding of it, but if you asked me to go into a digital studio today and produce a commercial, I couldn't do it because just because every time, and I remember at Fox 19, hey, we want everyone to be able to run a digital camera. We want everyone to be able to do digital editing. And so every time it came up to be my turn, well, it turned out, well, here's someone who's going to be a photographer. They need to take your place, or we've got someone who's got to be an editor, and they need to take your place. It's their turn, and it always just kind of felt like that for me. And I can't explain the timing on it, but when it comes to all the digital whiz bang stuff that they have these days, on the technical end, that's one area where I come up short. But that's what I tell young people is to learn everything you can about the technical end of it, and I did when it was analog. I mean, I go back, and only people who have been around for a long time will appreciate this. I go back to the time when I was literally splicing tape with a razor blade.
Oh, there you
And
go.
if you know what that means, then I congratulate you because you've been around
Betacam
for a
or
long time.
Digital 8 or DV or
I was doing all that stuff with a razor blade. So yeah, I go back a little ways. So the digital stuff right now is I've got to rely on others to be able to handle all that kind of stuff for me.
Nah, I hear you. I'm kind of in the same boat because I'm the only one in my class that knows anything even remotely close to like what analog is. I have a old Sony digital 8 camera that does like high 8 and 8 millimeter tapes and stuff like that.
How
So
about that?
absolutely, man, that thing is an amazing camera. It looks so
No,
good. There's something
absolutely.
about
Yeah,
analog,
and
man.
you know what? You can marry that with the digital stuff, and you can create probably some unbelievably great effects with that too. So I just
Absolutely,
think
man.
I tell young people, I just think there's just a ton of opportunities out there, and if you take it seriously, you try to be conscientious about it and
Yeah,
do the best work you can. And I always told young reporters uh, that whatever story you're doing, if someone's gonna thinking about doing news, whatever story you're doing that day, to your way of thinking, has to be the most important story on television. Even though it may, I mean, there's times, you're going to have the lead story, whatever. But even if your story is something that's going to be played at the end of the newscast, people are tuning out. Maybe not a lot of people are going to see it. You have to approach that, and you have to treat that story as this is the most important thing that someone's going to see today. And if you do that and you put that kind of effort into it, eventually that's going to pay dividends for you.
absolutely, man. Final question for you, and this is more of an open-ended statement. Is there anything you'd like to say before we get out of here?
Well, I appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely, man.
The research that you've done into what I've done I had no idea that much information was out there. I'm going to have to check up on that. But no, I appreciate you talking to me, and I appreciate being here. And whenever I can do anything to help out young people, every once in a while I get asked to come back to the broadcasting school, which is it still called the Ohio Center for Broadcasting? Is it
No, it's actually the Ohio Media School. They changed it. I like the
Ohio
old name
Media
better.
School? Well, which makes sense now because it's all media.
Well, yeah,
Media, yeah, is a term that covers everything when you talk about social media, internet stuff,
right.
broadcasting, and all the rest of it. So that makes sense. But every once in a while, I get asked to. It's been a few years, but every once in a while, I get asked to come back and do a lecture at the broadcasting school, or the Ohio Media Center, as it's called now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, I just, I just, again, even though I've been in the business and I have no idea how much longer this ride is going to last, but I always appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I hope for you it lasts as long as I'm around and I'm in the business. I want to throw that right back at you, Dan. Thank you so very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule of doing brain surgery and saving lives, for giving me a chance. Dan Carroll, Kendon Morris, WOMS News Radio.